You stand in an empty living room on a Tuesday afternoon holding a piece of paper that says your mortgage balance is $0. You expected something. A rush, a moment you'd remember. Instead, you just stand there, in the quiet house, feeling nothing you can quite name. You set the paper down on the counter. You go make lunch like it's any other Tuesday, rewind. The first payment felt like throwing money into someone else's house. It was the only move that actually mattered. $650 a month, renting a room. You are 22, sharing a three-bedroom house with two people you found online, one of whom leaves dishes in the sink for what feels like archaeological periods of time. Your bedroom door doesn't fully close, the frame's slightly warped, and you've learned to live with the 6-inch gap rather than fight the landlord about it. Your college roommate Chris moves into a one-bedroom apartment that same month alone, with an actual door that closes. He posts a photo of his empty apartment with a caption about finally having space to think. You like the photo. You don't mention the 6-inch gap. That night, you open a banking app you barely use and move $30 into a savings account you name. For no particular reason, someday. It feels less like a plan and more like a small, private joke. $900 a month, your first solo apartment. You are 24. The apartment is small, the appliances are older than you are, and the parking spot assigned to your unit is technically real, but functionally underwater every time it rains. You rename the Someday account to House, which currently holds $1,200, an amount that feels both enormous and insultingly small depending on which hour of the day you check it. Chris buys a car instead, a newer one, and invites you to see it in the parking lot outside your building. You admire it appropriately. You go back upstairs and transfer $50 into the house account before you can talk yourself out of it. Your father calls that weekend to ask how the new apartment is treating you. You tell him it's fine, small, but fine. And he says something about how everyone starts somewhere, a sentence meant kindly that lands somewhere between comfort and reminder. $1,200 a month, still renting, still saving. You are 26. Your rent has gone up twice in 2 years, each time by an amount your landlord describes as just keeping pace with the market, a phrase that means nothing and costs you real money regardless. The house account is at $9,000. Your sister buys a condo with her boyfriend, and at Thanksgiving she shows everyone photos on her phone. The granite countertops, the little balcony, the whole family passing the phone around like a religious object. Someone asks when you're going to do the same. You say soon, a word that has started to feel less like a plan and more like a small private apology. Chris asks you privately in the kitchen while everyone else looks at photos if the saving thing is actually working or if you're just being stubborn about it. You say you'll let him know in a few years and he laughs like it's a joke, though you both know it isn't entirely. $14,000, the house account, 18 months later. You are 27. You've stopped buying lunch out, stopped the streaming subscriptions you don't watch, stopped almost everything that doesn't directly serve the number in that account. Chris asks why you never come out anymore. You say you're saving for something, which is true, though it sounds smaller out loud than it feels in your chest at 11 p.m. when you check the account before bed. Nobody throws a party for the month you didn't buy lunch. That was starting to be the point. Your mother notices you've stopped mentioning restaurants or trips in your calls home and asks gently if money's tight. You tell her it's not tight, it's just going somewhere specific. And she asks where. And you say a house someday. And she says that's wonderful in a tone that suggests she can't quite picture the someday yet. $23,000, the house account, 2 years after that. You are 29. You've picked up freelance work on weekends, small design jobs, nothing glamorous, mostly just hours traded directly for dollars that go straight into the account without ever touching your regular life. Your mother asks if you're overworking yourself. You say you're fine, which is mostly true, in the specific way that fine can mean tired in a way you've decided is worth it. Your sister and her boyfriend get engaged that spring, and the wedding planning takes over every family conversation for months, venues and dresses, and a budget that at one point gets mentioned as roughly equal to your entire house account. Nobody means anything by it. It still sits with you longer than it probably should. $31,000, you are 30. A mortgage broker runs the numbers with you for the first time, and the number that comes back for what you can actually afford is smaller than you expected. Smaller than Chris's rent, smaller than your sister's condo, small enough that you sit in your car afterward for a few minutes before starting the engine. You don't tell anyone the number. You just start looking at listings in the range you were told, which feels for the first time less like a fantasy and more like a spreadsheet with a real answer at the bottom. You look at 11 houses over 4 months, most of them disappointing in some specific, memorable way. A kitchen that smells like cigarettes, a roof that needs replacing within the year, a neighbor's dog that barks the entire showing. You start to wonder if the number was ever actually going to become a house or just stay a number forever. The house. You are 31. A small two-bedroom, older with a kitchen that needs updating and a yard that's mostly dirt, purchased for $187,000 with a down payment that took 9 years to save, though nobody asks you how long it took. They just ask if you're excited. You are excited. You are also exhausted in a way excitement doesn't fully cover. You move in with furniture from 3 different apartments and a couch Chris helps you carry up a narrow staircase, both of you sweating and swearing in a way that feels oddly like the actual housewarming. Your mortgage payment is $1,340 a month. You do the math that night, 30 years, standard schedule, and the total interest number makes you close the laptop for a minute before you can look at it again. $1,340 a month plus $150 extra toward principal starting the second month. You are 32. The extra $150 comes from cutting the same things you cut before, the lunches, the subscriptions, one fewer weekend trip a year, small decisions that don't look like anything from the outside. Chris, renting a nicer apartment than your house cost to furnish, asks why you don't just enjoy your money now instead of throwing it at a bank. You don't have a clean answer that doesn't sound defensive, so you just say you like the math, which is true and also incomplete. Nobody throws a party for the extra principal payment. You make it anyway. $1,340 plus $150 year 4. You are 35. Your sister and her husband upgrade to a bigger house, a real one this time, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, a mortgage payment that's more than double yours. At a family dinner, your brother-in-law mentions their new payment almost casually, the way people mention things they want acknowledged without asking for it directly. You say that sounds like a lot, and he laughs and says you get what you pay for. You don't correct him. You just think about your own smaller house paid down a little further than it was last year, and let the comparison sit there without answering it out loud. Your niece is born that winter, and everyone gathers at your sister's new place for the holidays. The finished basement, now a playroom. The granite countertops now covered in bottle warmers and burp cloths. Someone comments on how much bigger their house feels for a growing family, and you nod, meaning it, while quietly running the math on your own extra payment for the month. Year 7. You are 38. The extra principal payments have chipped the loan down faster than the schedule predicted, and you refinance once briefly to lock in a lower rate, then go right back to paying extra the moment the new payment clears. Your father, who's watched you do this quietly for years without fully understanding why, asks one afternoon how much you actually owe now. You tell him the number. He's quiet for a moment, then says he didn't realize you were that close, that he always assumed 30 years meant 30 years. You tell him it doesn't have to, not if you don't want it to. That night he tells your mother about the conversation, and she calls you the next morning just to ask you to repeat the number, like she wants to hear it a second time to believe it. Year 9. You are 40. The balance is small enough now that you start doing math you never expected to do this early, running scenarios, checking what a lump sum from a work bonus could do to the payoff date. Chris, between apartments again, mentions he's thinking about finally buying something, tired of watching rent increases eat his raises before he even sees them. You help him run numbers on a spreadsheet one Sunday afternoon, the same kind of spreadsheet you built for yourself 9 years earlier. And he looks at the projected payoff date and says, that feels impossibly far away. You tell him it did to you too, once. He asks if you regret buying smaller instead of stretching for something like your sister's place. You think about it honestly for a moment, then tell him no, not once, though you understand why he'd ask. The midpoint. Your sister calls and you can tell from her voice before she even explains that something's wrong. She and her husband are struggling with the bigger mortgage. The one that felt like an obvious win at the family dinner years earlier, now sitting heavier than either of them expected once one income dipped for a few months. She asks, almost sheepishly, how you managed to keep your payments so manageable all these years. You tell her the truth, that you just bought smaller than you could technically qualify for and paid extra whenever you could. An answer that sounds almost insultingly simple after everything she's just described. She's quiet for a second, then says she wishes someone had told her that mattered more than the granite countertops. You don't say I told you so, you don't have to. You offer to help if things get tighter, and she says she'll let you know. The same phrase you used to say to Chris years earlier, and something about hearing it come back around feels strange in a way you don't fully examine that night. Year 11. You are 42. You make the final extra payment on a random Wednesday morning, transferring the amount before coffee. Before really thinking about it, the same automatic motion you've repeated for over a decade. The confirmation screen says balance, $0. You read it twice. You stand in your kitchen holding your phone, waiting for the feeling that's supposed to arrive. It doesn't, not the way you pictured it. You go to work like it's any other Wednesday, the return. That evening, you stand in the same living room from the opening, the paper, with the zero balance still sitting on the counter where you left it that afternoon. You expected the feeling to arrive the moment the number hit zero. It didn't. It arrived earlier, actually, scattered across 11 years of unremarkable months. It arrived the night you transferred $50 into an account with $1,200 in it and felt like you were pouring water into the ocean. It arrived in your father's quiet surprise at how close you'd gotten. It arrived in your sister's voice on the phone, finally asking the question you'd been ready to answer for years. The zero balance was never the real finish line. It was just the paperwork. The real thing was built in the dark, one $150 extra payment at a time, completely unnoticed until it wasn't. The cost was never really the money you didn't spend. It was the years of being quietly underestimated by people who loved you, who saw a smaller house and a smaller car and assumed a smaller life, when really you were just measuring the whole thing differently than they were. It was Chris's bigger apartment. It was your sister's granite countertops. It was every soon that felt like an apology instead of a plan. Nobody claps for the year you didn't upgrade. Nobody throws a party for the decade you kept paying the same extra $150, whether the month was good or bad. You did it anyway, quietly, for 11 years, with nobody watching. That was always the price, and nobody tells you that going in. Somewhere right now, someone is transferring $50 into a house account that currently holds $1,200, wondering if it will ever add up to anything real. They don't know yet that the number itself was never really the point. They don't know yet that 11 years from now, someone they love will call them, quietly asking how they made it look so manageable, and the answer will sound almost too simple to be the whole truth. You know that part now. They don't. Not yet.